Welcome to another episode of the Coffee and Podcast. I am your host, Philip Clayman. I'm also one of the co-founders of Three Tree Coffee in Statesboro, Georgia. And if you're new to this, we are all about coffee excellence and cultivating freedom for victims of human trafficking. And so some of our episodes are more focused on the coffee education, some's more focused on anti-trafficking movement, and we just really want to learn more about what we can do to stop current day slavery. Today's episode is a little bit more jovial and it's more on the coffee education side. It's called a 3x3x3, and we're gonna have three people drinking three coffees in 3 minutes. I'm super excited to do this episode. I'm excited to have our guest, but before we get to our guest, as always, I want to introduce our co-host, Michaela. Thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. So I'm super pumped. We have a friend on the show today, Sean Fox. He is the founder of Pioneer Design. And Sean, why don't you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, so founder of Pioneer Design and Marketing. We are a brand agency specializing in strategy, design, and performance marketing for brands that want to gain new ground. We're about almost 6 years old in May, and we've been fortunate to work with companies all over the globe, from Fortune 1000s to you guys and lots of places around the area. So we've got a great team, super excited about everything that's happening at Pioneer and with Pioneer.
Yeah, and y'all really do amazing work.
Thank you.
And you've been recognized in magazines with awards and recognitions from lots of different publications. So it's been super awesome just to see the growth and just the success.
Yeah.
So where did this journey begin for you? Did you like to doodle when you were younger? I mean, where did the graphic design journey start when you were younger, Sean Fox?
I will try and keep this brief, but I've played music for 30 years. So creativity has kind of been part of DNA, I guess you would say. I did some doodling as a kid, but not a whole lot. Really, what the funny story is, back in college, I was trying to get an internship at the Wesley Foundation as a music intern. And long story short, I didn't get that, which I thought was very strange. But what it did was give me an opportunity to become a youth intern at First Methodist with Brandon Williams, who then later started Connection, that my wife and I helped start with him. And what that did is put me in a position where we needed announcement slides for the youth group. And so I just kind of jumped in. I didn't go to school for this.
Wait a minute. All of what Pioneer Design is now started with church slides.
Yeah, it actually, let's go a little bit deeper. It started with Microsoft Paint.
That's where we all started.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it started. I mean, and this was a long time ago because I'm pretty old at this point. But it's just kind of something that I stumbled into, and one thing led to another. Design in Microsoft Paint, graduated to Adobe Suite, and then, we started a number of different college services and things at that church, started Connection Church. I was creative pastor for 10 years there, and then just kind of wanted to see what it would be like to run my own agency that did work for a whole lot of other people rather than just the church itself.
Wow. That is fascinating, that to know that it started with such simple, because I would have, honestly, I know you decently well, and I would have thought you studied this, or this was a passion from day one, but it was really more so the music side, and that creative bone is in you, and it more transitioned to the artistic side.
Yeah. I mean, and I've never claimed to be the best designer. I've just tried to make a habit of surrounding myself with people who are significantly better than me. So I would qualify it as functional design, and then just had a desire to see things communicated well and done well. So I think that's probably the impetus for Pioneer.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. And you've grown a ton.
We have.
I mean, y'all done work all over for major companies.
Yeah.
That has to have posed a lot of challenges. I just remember when we were roasting on a 1 pound roaster, and it was just the farmer's market, and I was working it as a side gig, simpler, right? Yeah. As it grows, more complex, and y'all are big now.
Yeah.
What are some of the greatest challenges you encounter at this stage of the business for Pioneer?
I think the number one challenge that I personally have had to deal with in my role is saying no. It's the idea of when you say no to one thing, one project, one whatever, it opens the opportunity for you to be able to say yes to something else. But the alternate to that is that that's also the scariest thing to do, is to, because as exciting as it is for opportunity, there's also like, what if this doesn't work out? I mean, we were talking earlier about the roaster, and, like the commitment level of that. And so when we say no to one thing, like we're committing to whatever else this thing may be later, that we don't know yet.
Yeah.
So I think that's been really challenging, I think, too, just as the team has grown, because we've grown from me and Katie Page kind of starting this thing out to now we're 15 people spread across the U.S. and now the globe. And so there's a lot of current challenges and probably some assumed challenges coming, pretty quickly around, people. I mean, you've got a number of people in your organization too, and I can imagine people are your greatest asset, but they can also be challenging at the same time. And so, shout out to our team. We've got a phenomenal team, but there's still challenges to be had with that.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Now, I'm kind of curious because I don't make coffee much anymore for customers. I make it for myself all the time. And I actually got to yesterday. I was out at the trolley and I was serving the customer. And I love those moments where I can kind of just get back on the ground level and just connect with customers, connect with coworkers and baristas and things like that. What percentage of your time do you spend designing now versus managing a business? How's that?
I don't. I really don't design anything anymore. I will jump in if I have to, like if we have a really crushing deadline that we need to get out and I need to jump in on something. But most of my role now is managing the business, sales, business development, and a lot of creative direction of, some of our design team will, and even the marketing team will develop a number of concepts. And then it's like, okay, based off of what we know, this is the lane or the direction we need to run in. So let's go here and then do these things. So I think that's one of the things that I've been moving into, but it's also presented a challenge because I sometimes miss designing.
Yeah.
I guess probably a better way to phrase it is I've shifted in from designing logos and websites to designing systems and people.
Yep, that's a great way to frame it. And you've done an amazing job with it.
Thank you.
It's been really neat just to see the business grow. I'm surprised to hear it's 0. I thought you were still doing a little design.
Zero may be a little much, but it's not a lot at all.
Yep. Yeah, it's nice. Well, we were having a really interesting conversation before this episode that I actually kind of want to bring into this episode because I just find it fascinating and it's kind of a hot button topic. And it's that it has to do with AI, artificial intelligence. And you were just giving some great feedback on how is that affecting your industry. So I just love to ask you, and you can share with our audience, how has artificial intelligence affected your industry and how do you see yourself responding to it with Pioneer?
So I think there's a lot of mixed emotions when I look at the industry as a whole, because I've been doing this for 15 or more years professionally, and so got a lot of friends in a lot of different levels of design, agency world, freelance, different things. I personally view AI as a tool. I view it kind of like a hammer for construction. The skill at which it can be leveraged is going to be based off of the skill of the user who's leveraging it. So the way that we talk about it with our team is it is a tool. The quality of its output is going to be based off of the quality of your input. And that it can't really, at the moment, function beyond somebody using it and inputting something into it. I think that it is going to, and already is, dramatically revolutionizing the creative industry. Unfortunately, I think it is replacing positions I don't think it's replacing people, but I think it's replacing positions. And we were talking about this earlier. I've heard this quote, and I think it's very true, that people will not be replaced by AI. They will be replaced by people who know how to use AI.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a modern day industrial revolution, but it's a technological revolution.
Yeah.
And it's not going away. It's out of the bag. So you can either use it or find something else to do.
Yep. Harness it or go the other direction.
And I think that's the harsh reality of it, but I think that's the honest reality of it.
I think the same thing happened when photography came into play. All the artists who did studio art, they were like, oh, our job is gone. But then we came back to the realization that people are always important and work is going to look different, but it can still be used. And now like photography is a new genre of art.
Yeah.
It could be a new thing, like people who know how to use it.
I think it will, because humans are perpetually creative.
Yeah. Because
we were made in our maker's image, who is ultimately creative. So I think because of that, for those people who may be fearful, I think it's just a problem to solve. How can I use it? How can I make this thing work for me?
Yep, absolutely. And there seems to be lots of times throughout history and even recent history where times change, systems adjust, and it's moving that direction. So it's more about, well, how do we pivot, right? And it's positions that change, not necessarily are people a part of it or not. It's really, are you willing to change that position and your mindset with it? Well, super fascinating, because I've seen it in the coffee industry some, and how it's starting to affect the coffee industry. And there's some people that are worried. You know, I've seen the robot arm drawing latte art and everything. But I love what you said. It's not replacing people; it's replacing positions. And so there's still a place for people to have a role in this. So
and creating new positions.
That's right. Awesome. All right. Well, the last question I'm going to ask you for today, then, before we move on to the coffee, is for us, coffee means more. We're passionate about using this beverage to end human trafficking. And so it just represents more than just a drink. And so what is coffee to you? Is it more than just a drink?
I think it's more than a drink. I think it's a conduit. I think it's a conduit for conversations. I think it's a conduit for community. I think, because when you think about how we all interact with coffee, we use coffee, the quintessential coffee shop, like my wife and I's favorite show is Friends. And that whole show is centered around the downstairs coffee shop.
The second home.
Right. And so, you see all of the memories that particular show generated. And then also just personally, all of the memories that are generated from working with you guys and also just being in different coffee shops. We were talking earlier about you being from Greenville and methodical and all of that journey with them, and watching your journey has been really fascinating and super fun to watch at the same time. So I think that's probably my answer. Is it's a conduit for a community and conversation.
Love it. We had a customer or an employee that worked with us one time, and he asked me, he said, why do people come here? Why do people come here so much? What do you think it is? Because I sense it, but what is it? And he was like, is the coffee that good? And I was like, I think our coffee's pretty good. But what people really want is community. Yeah. And there's something about the coffee shop and about the coffee beverage that really sort of attracts that and brings that together. So it's awesome to hear. Yep. Well, let's move on to our coffee today. So we always have a theme for our 3 coffees. And today's kind of fun because the theme for our 3 coffees is they were all finalists for a coffee bag design award. Specifically, there's a well-known specialty news outlet called Sprudgie. They have the Sprudgie Awards every year, and these were 3 of the finalists for Best Bag Design. And we thought it'd be fun just to take a couple minutes while we have Sean here to let him critique the bags a little bit. Take a look, see what he likes, maybe what he doesn't like, whatever he wants to share on these bag designs. So I will introduce the coffees one at a time, and then I'm going to hand it off to Sean just to take a look at it. And for those who are listening at home and not watching the video, I encourage you to go check out the video if you want to see it. Otherwise, we'll try and be descriptive with some of our audio so that way you know kind of what we're looking at. So the first one we'll start with is a local neighbor, Perk Coffee. They always do a phenomenal job with quality, design. And here is their Ethiopia Uraga coffee. And so I'm going to now pass this off to Sean. And Sean, what do you like about this bag? What do you notice?
So I think things that I immediately like, just having been working with you guys, in the past with coffee, but also recently we've, helped another startup with coffee. there's a lot of interesting things here. This is way more illustrative, I think is the word. Maybe I might be making that up, but there's a lot of illustration based type, lots of like hard shadows on this, like really defined things. The color's super interesting. So I think it's fun. I think that's probably, like, if I were to look at it, it's fun. I think the clear on the side is super interesting. Haven't seen that. And then, even it says "Stay Wild" here, so that's just kind of like perpetuating that fun bit about it. And so, like, if you were to see this, and this is kind of how I evaluate package design, is when you look at this on the shelf, is this going to stand out from everybody else?
Yeah.
And I would say this one's going to stand out significantly from a color perspective, but also just the way that they've illustrated the logo and all of this. And so lots of personality in the bag design. I guess we'll see if there's a lot of personality in the coffee too.
There you go. All right. We'll move that one back over here. And so do you think this drop shadow is helping create that sort of pop effect?
So I think yes, because there's a lot of contrast in the colors. So you've got black and white is the most amount of contrast you can ever have on any design here. And so paired with like a really bright pink, like, it's going to grab your attention. So you're going to pay attention to it if it's on a shelf.
Nice. Very cool. All right. So that was the design critique of Perk's bag. Let's move on to Brandywine Coffee Roasters. This is their Columbia Gyro Arcilla. It's a co-ferment coffee. We actually have an episode all about experimental processes. So if you don't know what that means, go check out the experimental processes episode. This is an experimental process. I'm going to hand it off to Sean. What do you think?
So I've had Brandywine before. Fantastic roaster.
Yes.
So this has so in contrast to Perk, this feels a lot more hand-drawn, authentic, if you will. So even when you look on the back of it, it's sketched, is what it feels like. So I think that's that for me, that gives me some vibes of, I guess, like somebody almost hand-painted this on the bag is what it feels like.
It looked almost to me like it was screen printed. One of my coworkers said that it was a type of, not screen print, but crayon almost or something, but it looks like a screen print.
And there's a lot more texture in this, because I don't know if you can see it here, but even like the little highlight marks that are kind of bleeding through over here that the black bag is poking through, in contrast to that, which is like a big flood coat of color. So this feels that feels much more fun. This feels much more niche and nuanced.
Yeah. Which they do have an artist actually on site. I think his name's Todd White. Forgive me if that's wrong. He works with Brandywine, and they do a separate drawing for each coffee that they have, and they do screen print it on the bags.
Oh, I was right.
Yeah, you were right.
Yes.
And then the wax
screen
seal.
printing.
The wax seal. What's that doing for you? Do you like that?
I mean, I think it's a cool ad. It's something different. It gives this almost this vintage type feel to it because of all of the, if you ever received a wedding invite or an old letter from a long time ago and you press that, there's something handmade about
Personal too.
Handmade about the bag design and about that wax seal. That's just a contrast, and I think that's the interesting part about design, is that none of these are wrong. They're all just different.
Nice. Love it. All right. Well, it's funny. I'm comfortable with coffees. I'm sandwiched between two artists here, and that is not my forte. So I'm just like, yeah, contrast, design, illustrious. All right, let's move on to the last one. We have Maru Coffee Roasters. And I'm being totally honest, I'm just perplexed. So I'm going to pass it off to Sean. Help me understand this undesigned person. What do you see here?
It's extremely minimal. And I think, given going back to the shelf, right? If you have, most coffee bags have this Brandywine approach. Like most coffee brands go that route. Like, hand done, we want it to be like handmade, boutique kind of thing like that. Even larger groups like Stumptown, maybe even onyx to some degree. Like there's a lot happening on the packaging. But when you come to something like this will grab your attention because it's basically nothing. Interesting fact about this is I don't know the design group or the coffee house of this, but Apple actually did this a long time ago, back in the, I think, late 90s, early thousands, where in software packaging, it was super busy. Windows 98, all of those types of things. There was a lot of busyness happening on the front of that. They shifted to an all-white package, and it was something similar to this, very minimal. The interesting part about it was that their sales jumped 30% without changing a thing of the product.
Yeah.
So for those people where minimalism works, it can be a really great differentiator.
Yeah.
I think it's a very sleek approach. Like, it's affecting a different clientele.
Right.
Someone who wants something that's sitting on your counter.
Yeah, your Instagram reels, like, very curated
Very aesthetic,
workspaces, like that kind of stuff, that would probably appeal to them.
Yep.
Nice. And it's all biodegradable, which I think is an added plus.
That is a great point. And there's some fun little features. There's a little explanation on the side as to why they're called Maru and things like that. So very cool. Well, I forgot to introduce the coffee itself. This is the Colombia Alvaro Mora. It is a pink bourbon, natural processed Colombian coffee. So two Colombian coffees on the table today. So super excited, Sean. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts on these coffees. And once again, if you were listening on the podcast, we do have all these videos up on our YouTube channel, 3 Tree Coffee, so you can see what we're seeing as we're going through this. It's now time to taste. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to divvy up these coffees. We don't know which one's which. We're going to sip them 1 minute each coffee, 3 minutes total. Okay. Afterwards, we'll pick our favorite. All right, so let's divvy them up a little bit.
Now I'm going to start timers.
All right, and everyone grab your spoon. And what we're going to be doing is taking it out of the spoon, putting it in the cup, and sipping it out of the cup. And in between each coffee, we'll try to rinse it off. And we'll start down here with coffee number 1. Spoons at the ready. And go. Oh, man.
Ooh.
Juicy. Tropical.
That's like apple juice to me. That's like strong juice.
Wow.
Almost got like peach.
Definitely has some like stone fruits to it.
I feel like maybe there's every fruit under the sun in this coffee.
I think you could grab every fruit.
Goodness.
I think it's really light.
Yeah.
I would say. Like it's not like raspberry, not strawberry, but like raspberry, blackberry. It's not any of that. It's not like a dark, like
No, it's
heavy
juicy.
taste. It's very...
Yep. It's very clean, very bright, a lot of clarity and a lot of flavor. I'm getting some kiwi, tropical. That is delicious. Okay, that's it with coffee number 1. Okay. We need to move on to coffee number 2 after you stir.
Oh, hang on. Let me drink the rest of this. You go, Pat.
All right.
Can't say anything about it though. I mean, it's done. Just kidding.
It's probably not fair to have any coffee right after that first one.
This one's almost like thin. Not getting a lot of flavor from it. It dropped at like 1:30 in the cupping.
Yeah. So you're saying the crust on top sort of dropped
within like 1:30.
It tastes really light in terms of light roast.
Yeah.
It's not vegetal, but it's almost a tiny bit, almost like a really, really light peanut. I know that sounds strange, but
No. Now that you say it,
Yeah.
I can taste it.
Yeah, for sure.
like really, really subtle, but a little peanutty.
And
Now that I've gotten more taste in my mouth here, it's a little better,
So the peanut, and this sounds weird, but a little bit of the dirt smell.
Dirt? Okay, well, that's it for coffee number 2. We got to move on. Last one, coffee number 3.
You got it.
I'm gonna reach over, sorry. Okay, this one's nice.
Very approachable.
Very nice.
Very drinkable.
Some like chocolate, sweet. I get a little bit of tartness, kind of like more on the berry side. Definitely not juicy, but
I would agree. Some of like the tart acidity, but also like a little floral. It's very light.
Yeah.
Both, all of these are very light.
yeah, it's like a nice dark chocolate.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah.
Cherry.
Yeah.
Cherry?
Yeah. Especially.
Yep.
Oh man, just great sweetness. So drinkable. I feel like that's like a
Yeah.
chugger. You can
Yeah.
just keep drinking it back to back.
As I just chugged it.
In fact, that's the last challenge, Sean.
Yep.
No, I'm just kidding.
All grounds and all, actually.
Okay.
All right. Last sip. Man, awesome. Well, some nice coffees on the table. That was 3 minutes. 3 coffees in 3 minutes. And so now we get to pick our favorites. So I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, point. You're going to point to your favorite coffee and we'll see which one wins. All right.
Okay.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1, point.
So good.
Not too surprising. Coffee 1 was a stunner. I mean, that was
So
like,
amazing.
that was a fantastic coffee. Tons of flavor. I'm pretty sure we know which one this is.
Yeah,
It's the brandy wine, co-fermented experimental process. Remember, go watch that episode if you want to know what that means. And I'll give you a little rundown.
Mm-hmm.
It was processed with some other unique yeast and some other fruits at the farm level. So the fact that it's so jam-packed with flavor almost certainly is attributed to that. But even so, we've had lots of experimental coffees, and that is
Very
beautiful.
intense.
Beautifully done. All right. Let's just go look at coffee number 2. This is the one that was really, really light. The Perk.
Interesting.
That surprises me.
Interesting.
That surprises me. Definitely tasted really light on the cupping table.
Yeah.
Which means Maru would be number 3. And
Number
that
2.
surprises me.
Well, yeah. But okay, I got you.
Yep.
I'm interested as to why.
There might have. I don't know.
I've
it
had-
was strange.
Yep. Here's my thoughts.
Okay,
I've
okay.
had Perk coffees
Okay.
before.
Yep.
And I don't think I've ever had anything this light from them in terms of it's really
say
light.
light?
And it's I hate to almost say this, but it tastes a tiny bit underdeveloped to me
Yeah.
on a roast front. I think it really could have, I think more flavor could have come out of this coffee. And because and this is purely packaging. Wow, the power of design. Because the package was so minimalistic for Maru, I was expecting a simpler, cleaner, really clean flavor. And 2 was coming off as almost too clean, too light. And so I was almost associating it with the Maru and the design. So that's why I think I had those backwards in my mind.
It's interesting.
You all
Yeah,
agree
same.
or-
I had it backwards as well. I didn't actually look at what like the flavor notes were because we do it blind, but
Right.
just from a design point, I was just like, oh yeah, this is gonna be these.
I didn't know who was doing what.
Yeah.
But I was surprised. I think it's a really interesting thing that you've got such a minimal package, but it does
Bold
still have
flavor.
a bold flavor. So I think that's a really cool juxtaposition for that.
Imagine if they had had this coffee in there.
Isn't it so funny how like the design almost frames the expectation?
Yeah.
And the only other thing I'll mention is that the Maru coffee, which is number 3, is a natural processed coffee, which usually will have some more fruitiness and some more powerful flavors. So that maybe should have been a sign that maybe that was the
And
Maru.
Ethiopias are generally pretty light.
Very light florals, but I was getting florals out of 3. Super interesting. But what a fun tasting today. So Sean, as always, thank you just so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Michaela, thank you for joining us as
Of
co-host.
course, glad to be here.
Awesome. Thank you for listening. Once again, go check out some of our other episodes, and thank you for helping us cultivate freedom.